Hey guys, today we're talking about integers and absolute value. An integer is any number from the set below. So the ... on both ends means that the positives go on forever as well as the negatives. Now, the cool thing about integers is they mirror each other. So the further to the right you get, the bigger the number. The further to the left you get, the smaller the number. So even though it looks like you have more negatives, you have a smaller number. Negative integers are the numbers less than 0 and are written with a negative sign, while positive integers are with a positive sign or no sign at all. 0, our friend right here, is neither negative or positive. You might want to take a moment and pause the video and write this down. You also need to make sure that you have the title, Integers and Absolute Value, on the top of your page. Some examples. An average temperature of 5 degrees below normal would look like this. 5 inches above normal would look like this, or like this. So go ahead and try these two, and I'll be back in just a second to show you what I did. You need to have number 1 and 2 written in your notebook, and if you'd like, you can have my example. 6 degrees above normal would look like this, and 2 below normal would look like this. So check your work with a red pen. We always check our work in red, so that way Mrs. Petruska knows whether we have a work that's our own and that we've corrected it, or whether we've just written down examples. You can also graph sets of integers. For example, if I wanted to graph 4, I would put a point here and mark it 4. If I wanted to graph -6, I would put it here and mark it -6. And 0 would be right here. Go ahead and graph these, and I'll be back in just a second to show you my work. Okay, here's what I did. Take a look at my dots and my numbers and check your work. So notice my work in blue. Please also write in your notebook, always mark with a solid dot in red. I want to make sure that you have that note. It's really important for something that we're going to do later in the year. Okay, so the absolute value is the distance between a number and 0. So both -5 and 5 have the same absolute value. They're also opposites of each other. Okay, so they're both 5 units away from 0. So if I asked you how many negatives you had, you would say 5. How many positives you would have, you would say 5. That's the absolute value. It's the distance from 0. So -4 is 4 away from 0. Please write this down. When I do this one, I have to follow order of operations. Absolute value signs are the first step in order of operations. Grouping symbols. Remember, it's grouping symbols, and sometimes people call it parentheses, like when they say PEMDAS. Multiplication and division go side by side, and addition and subtraction also go side by side because they're interchangeable. So I first have to look at the absolute value of -5, which I know is 5. Now I bring over the subtract 2, and I'm left with 3. Okay, go ahead and try the 2 at the bottom, and I'll be back in just a second to show you what I did. Okay, my work is in blue, so make sure you check yours with a red pen. The absolute value of 8 is 8 because it's 8 units from 0. On this one, you would bring over your 2 and that you're adding this right here, which the absolute value of -3 is 3, so you're adding 3 to 2 and you get 5. All right, so what about these? This one, the absolute value of -3, is 3 away from 0. 7 is 7 away from 0. Now, I want you to take a moment and write all of these down, and I'm going to show you what happens to these in just a second. Okay, you should have paused the video and had that written down. This one, I want you to pretend like there's a number out in front, like 3 minus 5, okay, or 8 minus 5. Okay, the absolute value of 5. So when you see this symbol, it tells you to do the opposite. Okay, so instead of him being the absolute value of 5, I first take the absolute value of 5, and then afterwards, I just bring the sign down. Sort of like, wrong slide, sort of like what we did in the slide before. Remember how I brought down the 2 plus? And remember how I brought down the minus 2? You're doing the same thing with these. So you first bring down whatever the absolute value of negative 8 is, which is 8. And then you bring anything in front of it down as well. So the opposite of the absolute value of negative 8, you first find the absolute value of negative 8, and the opposite of him is negative 8. All right, go ahead and try these, and I'll be back in just a second to show you what I did. All right, so first step is to change this absolute value into its absolute form. So negative 6 is 6 away, so it's greater than. 11 versus the absolute value of 4, which is 4. 4 is greater because it's further right on the number line. 21 versus 21 is equal to, just like 9 versus 9 is equal to. 8 versus 13, 13 is greater than. Okay, and the last one, 0 versus 3,